How would you like to learn 7 different ways to diversify your clinical expertise as a mental health provider without adding a new tax ID or business entity structure? If that is something that you want in terms of leveraging your time to earn more, then this is the right video for you. Hey, great day, everybody. My name is Dr. CK, clinical psychologist and therapist business mentor. And so we are going to talk about 7 ways to diversify your income outside of a 9-to-5 job so that you can ultimately get paid more while working less without having to build 2 different entity structures, 2 different tax IDs. You can operate in your genius zone as a mental health provider. And so I'm going to cover 2 different areas. The bulk of what we will be talking about today goes under the second area. And so the first area is the one-to-one service. This is the one that we are most familiar with, where we are trained, we are going into jobs, and we provide one-on-one therapy. This is where clearly we're in front of one client, we have one treatment plan, we have one or more diagnoses, but we are serving that individual one-on-one. Now, there is a subcategory clearly under one-on-one, which is it short-term therapy? Is it contractual short-term therapy? And then also, is it long-term therapy? So short-term therapy may be intentional, meaning you set aside time to maybe serve teachers during the summer, during the holiday, and they know that when they're coming in. Then you may have a contractual short-term agreement where you are contracted through an EAP provider and they tell you how many sessions they will cover for the client. And then if the client wants to continue with you, then they do have to pay out of pocket, or if you accept their insurance, then you can shift them over to your insurance. Then you have solution focus, which is people are coming in to solve a specific problem. Now, I have worked with clinicians in our coaching programs that have built out what's considered hyper-intensive sessions, which means that they are coming in, but they don't want to do the traditional one-on-one 45-minute session. They want to be locked in, maybe for what may seem like a boot camp where it's like, 2 to 3 hours, but they're not seeing you for a year. Then, of course, we have our long-term clients, and sometimes our clients may come in short-term, and then we find out more information about what is really the problem. And then they end up turning into a long-term client. But most of the time we can tell based off maybe the outset of symptoms like trauma, etc., where we know it's going to be about 6 months to a year plus, and they are considered a long-term client. So that wraps up the traditional. Now let's talk about 6 different ways that you can diversify your income within your clinical practice, even if you haven't started one yet, just helping you see that one-on-one therapy is not the end-all be-all. And so the most traditional ones are as follows. You have group therapy. Now, to me, this is the best way to start learning how to leverage your time, because you can take what you do in terms of how you help someone solve their problem one-on-one. You can take a percentage of what you do with that one-on-one client, because they're getting all your time, and then you can, put it into a group curriculum. So you can have, let's just say, up to 5 to 7 people. I typically say 7 is the threshold, because you want enough people to have a dialogue, but you don't want it too big where you cannot get to everyone in a 1-hour session or a 50-minute session, however much time you allot for. So remember with group therapy, though, that there still needs to be an intake. There needs to be an official start date. You can choose if you want to have an open group or a closed group. It does depend on the topic. I personally prefer closed groups because it gives the people in the group the opportunity to build a relationship with one another, trust one another, and be open with one another, and ideally even create a community post the group session when it is done. So beyond group therapy, you then have traditional family therapy. Now, family therapy can have carve-outs such as, children and the parental unit, even adult children and the parental unit. But family therapy can also be for couples. Okay. So just as a disclaimer, with couples, you do want to make sure that one of the individuals that either is paying for the services, especially if they have insurance, they have to have a diagnosis. And so let's just say if there are 2 people in a relationship coming to you for couples counseling, and person A has insurance through Blue Shield, person B has Anthem, but you only accept Anthem. Now, you can still see them, but you do want to help them understand that if they do not meet the clinical, checklist for the insurance for it to be covered from the insurance through the person that is insured, then it will not be covered for family counseling. So again, let's just say if the person who actually has the diagnoses that we could, assess is person A. and they have the insurance that we don't take. Unfortunately, after the intake, which is why I always suggest a consultation to educate your clients on this, we will have to let them know after the intake that, hey, your insurance is not going to cover these services, including this intake, because the person who has the insurance that I take, you have no symptomology of pretty much a clinical diagnosis, okay? Now, this has happened to me before, and luckily the couple knew, of course, with my psychoeducation, what it would and would not cover in terms of whose insurance I would cover. Now, unfortunately, they chose not to continue after the intake, but at least they knew when they start opening up Pandora's box that there was a high probability that I wouldn't be able to continue to see them. So that's family/couples counseling with a disclaimer. Now, the next one is for those who see children. So if you see children, there will be times where you would want to have a collateral conversation with the parent or caregiver, or better yet, after you've seen the kid a couple of times, you want to bring the parents or caregivers back into the picture to have some form of a family session. And so before you bill for a conjoint session, you just want to understand the differences between the different codes and the definition, if it is insurances, of which one you should code that would best fit your situation, because conjoint therapy is actually not a code for all insurance providers. If you are doing private pay, it would more than likely just be coded under family therapy. But the way that I would weave in conjoint therapy for the teens that I was seeing in my clinical practice is I will let them know during the intake process, your parent or caregiver would be involved in the first 1 or 2 sessions. I'm going to have conversations with them without divulging confidential information like a transcript and all these things, but they will be involved in the first few sessions because we need to be on the same page in terms of the treatment plan and also homework activities that I give you. The kids are always on board with that. Around, let's just say, the 3rd or 4th session, but it does depend on the presentation of the clinical symptoms, I would then move toward inviting the caregivers or the parents in, and we would actually have a structured session. My curriculum for family therapy is pretty much the same for the first 1 and 2 sessions, which is just bringing the family up to date with what we've been doing in terms of treatment. And then if there's anything that maybe the child needs help talking to the family about, then I would be there in support of them. But of course, we've discussed this in a confidential setting before the family ends up coming in. Okay, so I've introduced you to the 4 traditional ways of doing therapy, some one-on-one, some one-to-many, but now I'm going to get into still one-to-many, but more clinical expansion. At least that's what I call it. So clinical expansion is not the traditional therapeutic services, but you are offering your services to a larger group of people, even beyond therapy groups, even outside of your office, maybe even online. So the first one that I get asked about the most is clinical supervision. So I do want to give a disclaimer. There are a lot of individuals that will choose to open up a group practice, and sometimes prematurely. I was one of those people. So we're not going to get into that story right here, but I just want to let you know that when you have a group practice, you are running an entire agency. So I want you to think back to the practicum sites, the internship sites that you went to, whether you liked them or not, they were doing something right because they were still open. They still had a training program. And so they had a lot of moving pieces that sometimes we take for granted because we don't understand all the things that go behind the scenes of having an agency. And we just think, oh, it's just seeing clients and billing hours. But no, it's a lot more than that. And so with that said, I just want to make sure that you understand that when you are choosing to go into a group practice, that you are actually a clinical supervisor, you're the medical biller. You are also a therapist inside the clinical practice because you need to feed the clinical practice to make sure that everybody's being paid on time, right? And you also need to get paid. But you also are hiring people. You are also growing the practice and marketing the practice. And so I would not be so quick to jump in to a group practice before even getting some experience in the leadership arena. And the best way to do that is clinical supervision. So clinical supervision is you are not responsible for getting them clients. You are not responsible for any type of payroll. You are responsible for teaching them how to ethically treat clients, help them understand quality assurance, and signing off on their hours with a little mix of professional development. That is it. If anyone says, hey, can you be my supervisor and give me clients? You have accidentally stepped into being a group practice owner. Okay. So clinical supervision is one. Now, another one is workshops, training, and speaking. Now, this one is very similar to how you would take a percentage of what you do with one-on-one clients and then take it to group therapy, but instead you would take it to the community. Now, there are two different ways that you can do speaking and workshops. You can clearly host your own, but keep in mind you have to market it. You have to have a targeted audience. You have to set up your checkout systems. You have to deliver the material. You have to make sure that they get the materials that they're supposed to get even before or after your workshop. You have to implement feedback forms, all these things. So if you don't want to do the marketing piece, what I would highly suggest is find an agency, maybe even one that you used to work at or intern at, see what their training schedule is and see if there's a fund for it. And then you go in and you do trainings based on something that you are the expert in. That way they are providing the clientele. You're simply showing up with your curriculum and then you're getting paid for it. So that's what I would recommend for speaking and for workshops. Now, the last one, I actually talked about it already. It is group practice. All right, y'all, so we got some visitors. So we are wrapping up. We are about to do number 7. And so number 7 is group practice. So I kind of alluded to this earlier, but just wanted to sum it up with when you choose to step into having a group practice, you want to remember that you are a managing owner. And so this means that you are wearing a lot of hats in the beginning. And if you want a whole breakdown of what does it take to actually start a group practice, then make sure that you include that in the comments below. And I'll also link up some group practice owner videos that I've already recorded, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But remember, you're going to be switching through multiple hats. And so as a group practice owner, the first thing you want to do is identify what type of clinician do you want to have in your practice. So you can have interns, associates, trainees, pre-docs, post-docs, those who are still in school and or clearly just pre-licensed, or you can have licensed providers or a mixture of both. Now, I would recommend to choose one classification just so that you could build out that system. But again, that's why this topic deserves its own category. But I just wanted to put this in here as the 7th type of a one-to-many model for your clinical practice. And so I hope that you've enjoyed my 7 ways that you can diversify your clinical expertise outside of your 9-to-5 job. Of course, starting with the typical one-to-one services, but the bulk of the ones that I shared today is all one-to-many. Now, also, if you want to see a variety, like 80 plus ways of how to diversify your expertise into active and other passive streams of income like digital products, even going deeper into what type of digital products, what categories can you offer online, of course, ethical, and then also what other clinical services can you offer like speaking, training, consulting. I would highly recommend that you check out my profitable streams of income bundle down below. But let me know if you have any questions. And if you're new here, welcome, subscribe to the channel, come on back, like this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.